My name's Kimberly from Kimberly's Mindstorm, and today I'm going to do the monthly recommendations tag, or it's not really a tag, it's a GoodReads group. Okay, it's a GoodReads group by Trina at Between Chapters and Kayla Rayne at Kayla Rayne. And in this group, they give you a topic each month to discuss or recommend books. This month is fantasy books, which I love. I don't know how many fantasy versus sci-fi I really read until I look back at my bookshelf and it's all fantasy and sci-fi. Not completely, but a good 90%. So I have a few books that I'm going to recommend for you today. The first book series is by Tamora Pierce, and it's 3 different series. The first is the Song of the Lioness series. Now, during the Song of the Lioness series, you follow Alanna on her adventures. She wants to become a knight, and only men are allowed to be knights. So she has a twin brother, and they switch identities, and they're very young, so she pretends to be a boy, and she goes off to study to be a knight, and then her brother goes to study magic. And then it's set in another world where there are kings and queens and dangers that they have to go through. So it's a really great book, and she's my favorite author. Also, an interesting thing about these stories is that she grows each book and she gets older. So at the beginning, she's quite young, and then she starts off, I think, as a page, and she goes through the training to be a squire and to be, an apprentice knight, and then to be a knight. So it's really interesting to see. And not only do you see her in this series, but then you see a little bit of her in the next series by Tamora Pierce, The Immortals. And so this one's about Diana. She actually speaks to animals, and it takes place in the same world. So you see a little bit of Alanna, but then you see her story as well, which is really neat. And then after those 4 books, you also have The Protector of the Small series. So you get to see a little bit about what happened to the characters you love, while still following another character story as the world develops and progresses. So it has really good world building. So I really highly recommend this one. The next book I'd recommend would be Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Now, The Lightning Thief is the first in the book series, and it's about a boy named Percy Jackson, and he figures out pretty quick that he's not like other children. He is half god and half mortal, so he's a demigod. And of course, not everyone likes that, so there's these bad creatures that are chasing him, and he eventually goes to a place that's safe for his kind, which is Camp Half-Blood. So you may have heard that before. And he meets other people that have parentage that are gods and mortals, and so they're also demigods and other creatures like centaurs and things like that. So it's a really interesting story. Lots of action and adventure, and if you like the Greek gods and goddesses, it's really interesting how they play into this story and kind of weave their way through. So I really suggest this one. It's a good series to get started into. The next series that I suggest is The Golden Compass. It has a play with thinking for yourself. It does start off a little bit slow, so give it a few chapters, and then I think you'll really enjoy this one. A girl named Laura has they call them demons, but they're not actually demons. They're like half of their soul in animal form. And when they're children, they change shapes. They change to different animals and follow them along. And it's like having someone there that's really close to you and knows what you're thinking. And it's a really sweet relationship there. And this one stayed with me long after I read this. I read this book years ago, and the characters still stay with me to this day. So I highly recommend this book. You knew this was coming. It is Harry Potter. Now, Harry Potter is very popular for a good reason. These books have much depth, and they're wonderful reads. If you've only seen the movie, I highly recommend reading the books because there's so much more here. So if you love that story and you want to know more about the world and more about little side characters and story plots that might not have gotten attention in the movies, definitely read this book. It's worth it. It's hyped for a very good reason. So the next one I suggest reading is The Last Unicorn. Now, this is of course the movie, but there's also a children's book by the same title. It's a classic. It's about a story of the last unicorn, and she thinks she's the last, and she goes on like a quest to find the other unicorns. And in this process, a wizard turns her into a woman, so she gets turned into kind of like a princess. And together they have to go and find the other unicorns. So it's kind of like a magical story of finding magic or finding that soul that's inside of you. The last book that I'm going to recommend for you for the monthly recommendations is going to be Holes. Now, this is a wonderful story for people who like different details and like little catchbacks where they give you a clue and then later on that comes back around full circle. I kind of debated with my sister whether if this was fantasy or not, and it is fantasy because of the lizards, and if you read this you will know why. And if you want to contradict that, if you think this belongs in a different category, please leave that in the comments below and we can discuss that, because a lot of different categories have crossover. So you really have to think about which book belongs where and why. So if you have some more to add on this, please do. But these kids get in trouble for all different reasons, and they go to a camp and they have to do a lot of interesting things at the camp, like digging holes. But it's a lot more to it, and it's definitely worth reading if you haven't read this book before. High on the list. Put it up there. For the second book I'd recommend would be, oh gosh, what book is this?